Hello everyone, it's me Uncle John. Today I am going to read at 6067 Black Beauty, Anna Sewell. Chapter 6 The Fire. The first day we traveled about 50 kilometers, but James drove carefully and made sure that Ginger and I were always on the smoothest part of the road. It was evening when we reached the hotel where we were going to stay that night. It was in the marketplace, and two stablemen came out to us. The chief stableman was pleasant old man, and he led me into a long stable with 6 or 8 stalls in it, and 2 or 3 horses. The younger man brought in Ginger. James watched while we were groomed. I thought I was quick, James told the old stableman, but you're quicker than anyone. I've worked with horses since I was 12 years old, and I can tell you it's good to be able to work with a well-behaved, well-cared animal like this, said the stableman, patting my neck. Who is your master, Mr. Gordon? A Birtwick Park, said James. I've heard of him, said the stableman. He's a good judge of horses and the best rider in this part of the country. He does ride very often now, said James. Not since the poor young master was killed. I read about that in the newspaper, said the stableman. A fine horse was killed too, wasn't it? Yes, an excellent horse, said James. He was the brother of this one, and just like him. Terrible, said the old man. It was a bad place to jump, wasn't it? A man's life and a horse's life are worth more than a hare. They should be. Later that evening, the younger stableman brought in another horse, and a young man with a pipe in his mouth came into the stable to talk to him. Towler, go up and get some hay and put it down for this horse, will you? Said the stableman. But put down your pipe first. All right, said the other man, and went up a ladder and through a little door. I heard him step across the floor over my head and push down some hay through a hole in the roof into the new horse's feeding place. James came in to look at us before he went to bed, and then the door was locked. I don't know how long I slept or what time it was when I woke up, but the air seemed thick and I heard Ginger and another horse moving about worriedly. It was quite dark and I could see nothing. The stable was full of smoke and it was almost impossible to breathe. Smoke seemed to come from the little door above me, and I could hear a strange noise up there. The other horses were now all awake, moving about restlessly. At last I heard someone outside, and then the younger stableman ran in with the light. He began to untie the horses and try to lead them out. The first horse would not go with him, nor the second or third. He tried to pull me out, but he was so frightened himself that he frightened me, and I would not move. The noise above was louder now, and there was a shout of fire outside. The old stableman came in quietly and quickly and got one horse out, then another. By now, the flames were coming down through the roof, and the noise was terrible. Then I heard James's voice, quiet and friendly as it always was. Come on, Beauty. We'll soon get you out of this smoke. He took up his sharp and tied it over my eyes and led me out, patting me all the time. He took the scarf off, then shouted, "Take this horse, somebody, while I go back for the other." Window in the hotel were open and people were shouting. I watched the stable door as the smoke came out, thicker than ever. Then I heard one voice above all the others and recognized it as my master's. "James Howard, James Howard, are you there?" There was no answer, only the crash of something falling in the stable. But the next moment I saw James coming through the smoke, leading Ginger with him. "My brave boy," said the master. "Are you hurt?" James shook his head, unable to speak because of the smoke. Suddenly I heard the sound of wheels and galloping horses. "It's the fire engine," shouted someone. 2 horses ran past me, pulling the heavy fire engine. The fireman jumped out and we went quickly into the side, quiet marketplace out of the way. The master led us to a large hotel on the other side where a stableman came to take us in. Then the master hurried off to find his wife the next morning. He came to see how we were and to speak to James. I did not hear much, but James looked very happy, and the master looked proud of him. How did the fire start? Someone said they saw Dick Towler go into the stable smoking a pipe, but that when Dick came out, he didn't have it. The young stableman said that he asked Dick to go up the ladder to put down some hay, but also told him to put down his pipe first. Dick said that he did this, but nobody believed him. James said the roof and floor had all fallen in and only the black walls were standing. The two poor horses, who could not get out, were buried under the fallen roof. Joe grinned. The rest of our journey was very easy, and the next evening we reached the house of our master's friend, where the groom took us to a comfortable stable. We stayed 2 or 3 days, then returned home. John was glad to see us, and we were glad to see him. I wonder who will come in my place, said James. Little Joe grinned, said John. He's only 14 and a half, but he has a kind heart and wants to come, so I have agreed to try him for 6 weeks. The next day, Joe Green came to learn all he could before James left. He was a nice, happy boy and always came to work singing. But then they came when James had to leave us. I'm leaving a lot behind, he said sadly to John. My mother and you, a good master and mistress, and the horses and I shan't know anybody at the new place. It's hard to leave your home for the first time, said John. But if you get on well, which I'm sure you will, your mother will be proud of you. Everyone was sorry to lose James, but Joe tried hard to learn, and John was pleased with him. One night I woke up to hear the stable bell ringing loudly. I heard the door open at John's house, and his feet running up to the hall. He was back quickly. Wake up, Beauty, he said, coming into the stable. We must go quickly now. Before I could think, he had the saddle on my back and the bridle on my head. The master was waiting at the hall door with a letter in his hand. Ride for your life, John, he said. Give this to Dr. White. Then rest your horse and be back as soon as you can. Mrs. Gordon is very ill. Away went John and I through the park, through the village, and down the hill. There was a long piece of flat road by the riverside, and John said, Now, Beauty, do your best and need no whip. And for 2 miles I galloped as fast as I could, perhaps even faster than my grandfather, who won the race at Newmarket. When we came to the bridge, John slowed me down a little and patted my neck. Well done, Beauty, he said. Then I was off again as fast as before. The air was cold and the moon was bright, and it was a pleasant night. We went through a village, then a dark wood, then uphill, then downhill, and after 12 kilometers, we came to the town. It was 3 o'clock when we stopped by Dr. White's door. John rang the bell, then knocked on the door like thunder. A window was pushed up, and Dr. White's head appeared. What do you want? He said. Mrs. Gordon is very ill, said John. You must come at once, or she will die. Here's a letter. Doctor was soon at the door. My house has been out all day, and is exhausted. Can I take yours? My master told me to rest him, said John, but take him if you think it's best, sir. I'll soon be ready, said the doctor. John stood by me and patted my neck. I was very hot. Then the doctor came out with his riding whip. You won't need that, sir, said John. Black Beauty will go until he drops. Doctor was a heavier man than John and not so good a rider, but I did my very best. Joe was waiting at the gate and the master was at the hall door. He did not say a word. Doctor went into the house with him and Joe led me to the stable. My legs were shaking and there was not a dry hair on my body. The water ran down my legs and I was hot all over. Poor Joe. He was young and knew very little. He did the best he could, cleaning my legs and my chest, but he did not put a warm cloth on me. He thought I was so hot that I wouldn't like it. He gave me some cold water to drink. Then he gave me some food and went away. Soon I began to shake and tremble with cold, and I ached all over. I wished John was there, but he had 12 kilometers to walk, so I tried to sleep. After a long time, I heard John at the door. I gave a low cry and was at my side in a moment. I could not tell him how I felt, but he seemed to know immediately. He covered me with 3 warm cloths, then went for some hot water, made me a warm drink. John seemed very angry. Stupid boy, he said to himself over and over again. No clothes put on, and I suppose the water was cold too. The boys are no good. I became very ill and could not breathe without pain. John looked after me day and night. My master often came to see me too. My poor beauty, he said one day. My good horse, you served your mistress's life, saved your mistress's life, you saved her life. I was very glad to hear that. John told my master that he never saw a horse go so fast. One night, Tom Green, Joe's father, came to help John give me my medicine, then stayed for a while. At first, both men were silent. Then Tom said, John, please say a kind word to Joe. The boy is heartbroken. He can't eat his meal. He can't smile. He knows it's his fault Beauty is ill, but he did his best. He said if Beauty dies, no one will ever speak to him again, but he's not a bad boy. After a short pause, John said, I know he meant no harm, but I'm proud of that horse, and I hate to think his life may be thrown away like this. But I will give the boy a kind word tomorrow if Beauty is better. I heard no more of this conversation, as the medicine did well and sent me to sleep, and in the morning I felt much better. Joe learned quickly after this and was so careful that John began to give him many things to do. One day, John was out and the master wanted a letter taken immediately to a gentleman's house about 5 kilometers away. He told Joe to settle me and take it. The letter was delivered, and we were returning through a field where we saw a cart full of bricks. They were so heavy that the wheels of the cart were half buried in the soft ground, and the horses could not move the cart at all. The man leading the horses was shouting and whipping them without stopping. Don't whip the horses like that, Joe shouted at him. The wheels are half buried and won't move. I'll help you. Take some bricks out to make the cart lighter. Mind your own business, said the man angrily. He was in a terrible temper and more than half drunk. Joe turned me, and we galloped towards the house of the brickmaker, Mr. Clay. Joe knocked on the door. The door opened. Hello, young man, began Mr. Clay. There's a man in your field whipping 2 horses to death, Joe told him, his voice shaking with anger. I told him to stop, but he wouldn't. I offered to help him lighten the cart, but he refused. I think he was drunk. Please go, sir, I will, said the man, and hurried off. When we got home, Joe told John all about it. You did the right thing, said John. Many people would ride by and say it was none of their business, but cruelty is everybody's business. Just before dinner, the master sent for Joe. The drunken man was accused of cruelty to horses, and Joe was warned to tell his story to the police. I'll tell it gladly, said Joe. We heard afterwards that the poor horses were so exhausted and so badly beaten that the man might have to go to prison. Joe came across and gave me a friendly pat. We won't allow cruelty, will we, old friend, he said. And he seemed to have grown up suddenly. Chapter 8. The Urshel Park. I lived at the Berwick Park for 3 happy years, but then changes came. Our mistress was often ill, and the doctor advised her to go and live in a warm country for 2 or 3 years. Everyone was very sorry, but the master immediately started making arrangements to leave England. John did his work silently and sadly. Joe didn't sing anymore. Then we heard that the master had sold Ginger and me to an old friend of his, Lord Grey. Meadowlegs was given to the neighbor, Mr. Blomfield, and Joe was employed to look after him. John was offered several good jobs, but he wanted to wait and look around. I want to train young horses, he told the master. I can't think of anyone more suitable for that work than you, John, said the master. If I can help you in any way, write to me. The next morning, John took Ginger and me to Urshel Park, where Lord Grey lived. There was a very fine house and lots of stables. John asked for Mr. York, who was going to be our new driver. Mr. York was a good-looking man of about 40, with a voice that expected to be obeyed. He called the groom to take us to our boxes and invited John to have drink with him. We were taken to a pleasant stable and put in boxes next to one another. Then we were groomed and fed. Half an hour later, John and Mr. York came to see us. Mr. York looked at us carefully. Is there anything you want to mention about them, Mr. Manley? He said. I don't believe there is a better pair of horses in the country, said John, but they are not alike. The black one has the most perfect temper I have ever known. The other was badly treated before she came to us, but has grown better tempered in the last 3 years. We have never used the bearing rein with either of them. They will wear one here, said York. Lady Grey follows the fashion. If the horses are not reined up tight, she doesn't like it. I'm sorry to hear that, said John. He came to pat each of us for the last time. I held my face close to him, which was all I could do to say goodbye, and then he was gone. I have never seen him since. Lord Grey came to look at us the next day and seemed pleased. He heard what John had said about us. Keep an eye on the mare, he said to York. Don't make the bearing rein too tight at first. I'll mention it to my wife. In the afternoon, we were harnessed to the carriage, and Lady Grey came out and looked at us. She was a tall, proud-looking woman and did not look pleased, but she said nothing and got into the carriage. The bearing rein annoyed me, but did not pull my head any higher than I was used to carrying it. I was worried about Ginger, but she seemed quite happy. But the next afternoon, when Lady Grey came down the steps, she said, York, you must put those horses' heads higher. They don't look nice. I'm sorry, my lady, said York, but they haven't been reined up for 3 years. But if it pleases you, I can take them up a little more. Do that, she said. That day we had to pull the carriage up a steep hill. I wanted to put my head forward to make the work easier, but I couldn't. Now you can see what it's like, said Ginger. When we came back, if it doesn't get any worse, I shall say nothing, but I won't have the rein pulled up tighter. Each day the bearing reins were shortened a little more. Lady Grey came out later than usual and said, York, when will you get those horses' heads up? To pull them up at once and let's have no arguing. York came to me first and made the rein very tight. Then he went to Ginger, but the moment he took off the rein in order to shorten it, she stood up on her back leg. York and the groom could not control her. She kicked herself out of the carriage and fell down, kicking me on the leg as she went. Look, sat on her head to keep her still and shouted, Let the black horse out, undo the carriage, cut the harness. The groom cut me out of the harness and hurried me back to my box. Then went back to York. I was angry and my leg hurt, and I felt that I wanted to kick the first person who came near me. Soon after, Ginger was led in by 2 grooms. York was with her and came to look at me. I knew those bearing reins would cause trouble, he said to himself. So we had been kicked and washed the place gently with hot water to help the pain. Lord Grey was angry when he heard what had happened. He blamed York for taking orders from the mistress. York said that he would take orders only from Lord Grey himself from now on. But things went on the same as before, except that Ginger was never put into the carriage again. I pulled it with the horse called the Max, was used to the right rein, but those 4 months pulling Lady Grey Lady Grey's carriage was terrible. The sharp bit cut into my tongue and mouth. The rain hurt. And made it difficult to breathe, and I felt tired and very miserable. In the spring, Lord Grey and some of his family went up to London, took York with them. Two daughters remained at the Hall. Lady Harriet never went out in the carriage. Lady Anne preferred riding on horseback with her brother or cousins. She chose me for her horse, and I enjoyed these rides. Sometimes with Ginger, sometimes with Lizzie, a horse liked by the young gentleman. There was a gentleman called Blantyre staying at the Hall who always rode Lizzie and was so pleased with her that Lady Anne wanted to try her. I don't advise it, said Blantyre. She is too easily frightened for a lady to ride. My dear cousin, said Lady Anne, laughing, I've been riding horses since I was a baby and have followed the hounds many times. Now help me up. So Blantyre helped her into the saddle, then climbed on me just as we were moving off. Lady Harriet asked for a message to be taken to Dr. Ashley in the village. The village was about 2 kilometers away, and the doctor's house was the last one in it. The Blantyre got off to open the gate for Lady Anne, but she said, I'll wait here for you. He went off and we waited. There was a field with an open gate on the opposite side of the road, and at the moment some young horses came trotting out. They were wild and excited, and there was the boy behind them, waving a large whip. Suddenly one of the young horses ran across the road and banged into Lizzie's back legs. She gave a violent kick, nearly unseating Lady Anne, and immediately galloped away at full speed. I gave a loud neigh for help and made a noise with my feet until Mr. Blantyre came running out of the doctor's house. He saw Lizzie and Lady Anne now far away down the road. He quickly jumped into the saddle and we raced after them. For about 2 kilometers the road was straight. Then it turned to the right before becoming 2 roads. Long before we came to the bend, Lady Anne was out of sight. Which way had she gone? A woman was in a garden, looking up the road. Which way? Shouted Blantyre. To the right, cried the woman. Away we went, up the right-hand road. We saw her for a moment, then she was gone again, around another bend. Several times we saw her, but lost her again. Then we came to some rough land, very uneven and full of holes in the ground, the worst possible place for galloping. On this open ground, we could now see Lady Anne clearly, her long hair flying out behind her in the wind. Slowly began to catch up. There was a wide ditch ahead, and I was sure it would stop them, but without a pause, Lizzie jumped it and fell. I cleared the ditch and landed safely. Lady Anne was lying on the ground, not moving. The Blantyre jumped down beside her and called her name, but there was no reply. Her face was white, and her eyes were closed. Annie, dear Annie, do speak, he cried. There were 2 men cutting grass close by, and they saw Lizzie galloping away without a rider and came across. Can you ride? The Blantyre asked one of them. I'm not a good horseman, sir, he said, but I'll do my best. Ride this horse to the doctor's and ask him to come immediately. Then go on to the Hall, said Blantyre. Tell them all you know and ask them to send the carriage. The man climbed into my saddle and we galloped off and tried not to shake him about too much, and he soon discovered that he needed no whip. There was a lot of excitement at the Hall when they heard what happened. I was put into my box, the saddle and bridle were taken off, and a cloth was thrown over me. 2 days later, the Blantyre came and patted me. You did well, he said. I am sure you knew Annie was in danger. She must ride only you from now on. From this, I knew that my young mistress was out of danger and would soon be able to ride again. Chapter 9. The Accident and New Masters. A man called Reuben Smith looked after us while York was in London. He was gentle and clever with horses and an excellent driver. But he had one fault. He sometimes drank too much. For weeks or months, he was all right, but then without warning, he would begin to drink heavily and behave badly. But he was a useful man, so York had kept quiet about Smith's drinking, saying nothing to Lord Grey. Then one night, Smith drove some ladies and gentlemen home from a party and was so drunk that he could not hold the reins. York could not hide this, and Lord Grey told Smith to leave. However, some time later, York spoke again to Lord Grey, who was very kind-hearted, and he took Reuben Smith back. Smith promised never to get drunk again, and kept his promise, and because of this, he was told to look after the stable while York was away. One day, the carriage needed some repairs, so it was arranged that Smith would take it to town, leave it at the carriage maker's, and then ride me back again. Mr. de Blantyre wanted to go to the station, so he went with us. At the station, Mr. Blantyre gave Smith some money and said, "Take care of Lady Anne, Reuben, and don't let anyone else except her ride the Black Beauty." We left the carriage at the market, and Smith rode me to the White Lion Hotel. He told the stableman to give me some food and had me ready for 4 o'clock. One of my front shoes was loose, but the stableman did not see it until 4 o'clock. Smith came back at 5 and said he would not leave at 6 because he had met some old friends. The stableman told him about the loose shoe. "It'll be all right until we get home," said Smith. He finally came back at 9 o'clock, shouting loudly and in a very bad temper. We left, and almost immediately he began to gallop, often giving me sharp cuts with the whip, although I was going at full speed. Before we were out of the town, my shoe came off, but Smith was too drunk to notice. It was very dark and on the road at that speed. My foot was soon cut and bleeding from the sharp stones. I could not go on. The pain was too great. I fell violently on both my knees. Smith was thrown off. He tried to get up but couldn't. Then he lay still. I could do nothing but wait. It was nearly midnight when I heard the horse's feet and the whole wood of a carriage. I neighed loudly and was very happy to hear an answering neigh from Ginger and men's voices. Then the carriage came out of the darkness and stopped. Two men jumped down beside Smith. "It's Reuben," said one, "and he's not moving, Robert." "He's dead," said Robert, touching Smith. "His hands are cold. His head is covered with blood." They looked at me and saw my cut knees. "The horse has been down and thrown him," said Robert. "He tried to lead me forward, but I almost fell again. He's bad in the foot, too. No wonder he went down, riding over those stones without a shoe. Reuben was drunk. Ned, he'd never ride a horse without a shoe unless he was drunk." Ned took Smith's body back in the carriage, and Robert tied his handkerchief round my foot and led me slowly home. No one blamed me for the accident. The owner of the White Lion Hotel said that Reuben Smith was drunk when he left, but I had to leave Earlshall, and so did Ginger. For a moment or two, I was allowed to live out in a field. One day, Ginger was brought in to join me. She'd been ruined by the hard riding of Lord Grey's son, and after 12 months' rest, she was going to be sold. Although my knees got better, they looked very ugly, and so I was no longer suitable for a fashionable family. It was very pleasant being in the field with Ginger, but one day, Robert came in and took me away. We were both very sad to say goodbye to each other, Ginger and I. I was sold to men in Bath, who kept many horses and different kinds of carriages for hire. I was a job horse, and all kinds of people hired me. Some were good drivers, others were very bad. Then one man persuaded my master to sell me to a friend of his who wanted a safe, pleasant horse for riding. And so that summer I was sold to Mr. Barry. Mr. Barry knew very little about horses, but he hired a comfortable stable for me. and a man called the felcher to look after me. He ordered the best oats and plenty of other good food for me to eat too. For a while, all went well, but then there seemed to be fewer oats and more grass in my meals. The grass food, though very good, was not enough to keep me strong and healthy. However, I could not say anything, and it went on for about 2 months. Then one afternoon, my master rode into the country to see a friend, a gentleman farmer who knew about horses and who looked very close at me. Your horse doesn't look as well as it did when you first had him, Barry, he said, feeling my neck and shoulders. See how wet and warm he is after just a gentle ride? My groom says that horses are never in good condition in the autumn, said my master. But this is only August, said the farmer. With your light work and the good food, he shouldn't be like this. I don't know who eats your oats, my friend, he went on, but I doubt that your horse gets any of them. I advise you to watch your groom more closely. How I wanted to speak. I wanted to tell my master where his oats went to. My groom came every morning at 6 o'clock, bringing his little boy with him. The boy carried the basket and went into the room where the oats were kept. I would see them filling a bag with oats and putting the bag into the basket. 5 or 6 mornings after the visit to the farmer, the boy left the stable with his basket of oats, but came back soon after, looking frightened, with 2 policemen holding his arm. Show me where your father keeps the food for his chickens, one policeman said to the boy. The boy began to cry, but there was no escape. Moments later, policemen found another empty bag, like the one in the boy's basket. They took the felcher away with them. That was the last I ever saw of him. Now the groom was employed, but he was very lazy about cleaning, and I became thin and unhealthy from standing in a wet, dirty stable. After all this trouble with grooms, Mr. Berry decided to stop keeping a horse, and I was sent to a horse fair, a place where hundreds of horses were bought and sold, and more lies were told, I think, than in any other place in the country. That day I was lucky. I was bought for 25 pounds by a man called Jeremiah Barker, but everyone called him Jerry, and I shall do the same. Chapter 10. A London cab horse. Jerry Barker was a small man, but well made and quick in all his movement. He lived in London and was a cab driver. Jerry's wife, Polly, was a little woman with smooth dark hair and dark eyes. His son Harry was nearly 12 years old. Anne was a tall, good-tempered boy. His daughter Dolly was 8, and she looked just like her mother. Jerry had his own cab and 2 horses, which he drove and groomed himself. His other horse was a tall, white animal called Captain. The next morning, Polly and Dolly came to see me. Harry had helped his father since early that morning and had already decided that I would be a good horse. Polly brought me a piece of apple. Dolly brought me some bread. We will call him Jack, after the old one, said Jerry. Shall we, Polly? Yes, she said. I like to keep a good name going. Captain went out in the cab all morning, and I went out in the afternoon. Jerry took a lot of care to make sure that my collar and bridle were comfortable, and there was no bearing rain. We went to the cab stand where the other cabs were waiting for passengers and took our place at the back of the last cab. Several of the other drivers came to look at me. Too handsome, said one. You'll find something wrong with him one morning. Then a man in a gray coat and gray hat came up. His name was Grant, and he looked a happy, sensible kind of man. He had been longer on the cab stand than any of the other men, so they let him through to have a look at me and waited for his opinion. He looked at me all over very carefully, then said, He's the right kind for you, Jerry. I don't care what you pay for him. He'll be worth it. My first week as a cab horse was very hard. I was not used to London. The noise, the hurry, the crowds of horses, carts and carriages, but Jerry was a good driver and soon discovered that I was willing to work and do my best. He never used to whip on me, And we soon understood each other as well as a horse and man can do. Jerry kept his horses clean and gave us plenty of food and fresh water. And on Sundays we rested. I never knew a better man than my new master. He was kind and good tempered like John Manny. Harry was clever at stable work and always warm to do what he could. Polly and Dolly came in the morning to brush out the cape and to wash the glass while Jerry gave Captain and me a grooming. There was a lot of laughing and fun between them, which all helped to keep Captain and me happy. Family came early in the morning because Jerry did not like lateness. It always made him angry when people wanted him to drive hard because of their own lateness. One day, two wild-looking young men called to him, "Cabby, hurry up. We are late for our train at Victoria. Get us there in time for the 1 o'clock train and we'll pay you double." "I will take you at the usual speed, gentlemen," said Jerry. "Extra money doesn't pay for extra speed." Larry's cab was standing next to ours. He opened the door and said, "I'm your man, gentlemen. My horse will get you there all right." And as he shut them in with a smile at Jerry, he said, he always refused to go faster than a trot. Then, whipping his horse hard, he went off as fast as he could. Jerry patted me on the neck. "Extra money won't pay for that kind of thing, will it, Jack?" he said. Although he was against hard driving to please careless people, he always went at a fair speed and was not against going faster if there was a good reason. I remember one morning we were on the stand waiting for a passenger when a young man carrying a large suitcase went by. He stepped on a piece of apple which lay in the road and fell down heavily. Jerry ran across the road and helped him up, then took him into a shop to sit him down. Some time later, the young man, looking white and ill, came out again and called Jerry, so we went across the road. "Can you take me to the South Eastern Railway?" He said. "My fall has made me late, and it's very important that I don't miss the 12 o'clock train. I'll pay you extra if you can get me there in time." "We'll do our best, sir," said Jerry, and helped him into the cab. It was always difficult to drive fast in the city in the middle of the day when the streets were full of traffic, but Jerry and I were used to it. No one was faster at getting through the carriages and carts, all moving at different speeds, going this way and that way, in and out. In and out we went, as fast as a horse can do it. And we got to the station just as the big clock showed 8 minutes to 12. "We are in time," said the young man happily. "Thank you, my friend, and your good horses too. Take this extra money." "No, sir," said Jerry. "Thank you, but it isn't necessary. I'm glad we were in time. Now hurry and catch your train." When we got back to the cab stand, the other men were laughing because Jerry had driven hard to the train. "How much extra did he pay you, Jerry?" said one driver. "Nothing. He offered me extra, but I didn't take it. If Jack and I choose to have a quick run now and then, that's our business and not yours." "You'll never be a rich man then," said Larry. "Perhaps not," said Jerry, "but I'll be a happy one. And you, Larry, will die poor because you spend too much money on new whips, beating your poor horse until it's exhausted, and then you have to buy another one." "I have never had good luck with my horses," said Larry, "and you never will, Mr. Grant. Good luck is very careful who she travels with, and mostly chooses those who are kind and sensible. That's my experience anyway." He turned round again to his newspaper, and the other men went back to their cabs. Winter came early, with snow, rain, or strong winds almost every day for weeks. Jerry sometimes went to a coffee shop near the cab stand Sometimes Dolly came with some hot soup that Polly had made for him. One cold wind day, Dolly was waiting for Jerry to finish his soup when a gentleman came towards us. Jerry started to give the soup bowl back to Dolly and was just going to take off my warm cloth when the man said, "No, no, finish your soup, my friend. I can wait in the cab until you're finished." Jerry thanked him and then came back to Dolly. "That's a real gentleman, Dolly," he said. "He has time and thought for the comfort of a poor cab driver." Jerry finished his soup. Then we took the man to the Clapham. After that, he took our cab several times. And often came to pat me. It was very unusual for anyone to notice a cab horse, and I was grateful. Another day, the gentleman saw a cart with two horses standing in the street. Driver was not with them, and I don't know how long they had been standing there. However, they decided to move on a few steps. Suddenly, the cart driver ran out of the building and caught them. He seemed very angry and began to whip the horses hard, even beating them around the head. A gentleman saw him and walked quickly across. "Stop that at once, or I'll call the police," he said. The driver was drunk and he began to shout, but he stopped whipping the horses. Meanwhile, a gentleman wrote down the name and address that was on the side of the cart. "Why do you want that?" shouted the driver. A gentleman didn't answer. He came back to the cab. "Many people have thanked me for telling them how their horses have been used," he told Jerry. "I wish there were more gentlemen like you, sir," said Jerry. "They need it in this city." The end.